Hey, how are you today? This is Josh Patrick, and you're at Cracking the Cash Flow Code. And my guest today is Lance Cayko, and Lance is with F9. Oh, I'm drawing a blank on the
F9
F9,
Productions.
F9 Productions. I'll get that right sometime. I ought to be able to put these things in great big block letters in front of my face so I can see it. And there it is. I even made this thing up that says where it is, and I forgot to put it up. So there we are. So Lance, welcome to our show today. And Lance is a serial entrepreneur. Looks like he's done tons of things. He owns an architectural design firm and a construction company. And I love guys like him, so we'll bring him on and get started. Hey, Lance, how are you today?
Doing great. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate having me on your show.
My pleasure. So,
and I should have actually, before we started recording, told you my last name is pronounced Cayko. I totally spaced that out, but nobody gets it right, so it's all good.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay,
Yeah,
it's Lance Cayko.
Yeah.
You know something, Lance? You're right along with everybody else I've worked with where I massacre their names. It's something I'm really good at.
If only there was a way we could figure out how to monetize that, right?
If I did, I'd be a very rich man today.
Yeah.
So I tend to massacre everybody's name and forget them while I'm at it. So I'm curious about something. You have like this thing in the foundations, 9 principles of F9. And when anybody ever has that, I always ask the question, okay, what are they? So what are they?
Yeah, so our company name, as you mentioned, is F9 Productions, and we can get into where that came from if you ever would like to know. But based on that, we have decided a couple years ago to put down some fundamental principles that really guide everything we do, and it goes further than just our architecture company. It goes into our podcast, and then also how we teach at the University of Colorado Boulder, how we run our construction arm, and every single entrepreneurial endeavor that we do. Because I think if you can boil this down to maybe starting with the first principle, which is F1, is to be brilliant at the basics. If you're not good at the basic task that you're doing, how can you? And if you don't master it, how can you ever teach that to somebody else so that they can follow in your lead and you can start to multiply? I mean, that's the whole idea behind starting any company, is whether it's service-based or product-based, is you need to really hone in on what you're doing and become a master at it before you can multiply it and then obviously make more money and prosper and flourish. So that's really what F1 means. F2 really comes down to more of an architecture side of things. Is before I would say the late 90s and early 2000s, a lot of architects or anybody who was doing any kind of design work was working in basically 2 dimensions, meaning in their CAD program, everything was lines and that was it. But and a lot of times those lines could lie to people, and they did, and it really caused a giant rift between architects and contractors, and it starting to mend at this point. But the idea is that now, since we're modeling everything in the 3rd dimension with Revit Architecture, ArchiCAD, or all of these other very sophisticated CAD programs, we actually try to model our buildings, even if they're additions, new versus old or brand new, doesn't matter, exactly how they're built already. If we're doing an addition, and we're going to model the addition, how it's going to be built. So we're already virtually testing that stuff. And what it's done is it just builds on top of the basics of what we're doing with F1. And
so I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
How many architects are using this sort of technology these days?
Over 50% now. Yeah, we're probably hitting about the 2/3 mark. There's still some old dinosaurs, and I mean that with all endearment, because they actually end up hiring us to do everything and model it virtually. So we are seeing a pretty big shift industry-wide over the past decade and a half, I would say, into that.
Okay, so that's industry-wide. It's not just the Denver area.
Yes, sir. Yep, industry. Yep, worldwide, actually.
Okay, cool. So your 3rd principle?
3rd principle, training and learning is, again, a force multiplier. We learned the hard way, one of the very first employees that we hired, we just assumed, because he was actually older than us, that he knew everything. He already knew how to use our software and that he would be up to our standards and everything. And it was kind of a nightmare for a couple months. So what we decided is, and thankfully we did hire that person early on in our career so we could learn that lesson. It didn't cost us very much money. now if we did that, it would cost us a lot of money. But when we bring somebody in to F9 or even our construction arm, there's 3 days of training that happens before they're ever billable. And it just, again, reinforces that foundation. And then we can multiply them again and their force factor because we've trained them properly. So we've set up some internal training methods that we then even, use at the University of Colorado Boulder to make that happen.
So are those is that technical training you're doing, or is that values training or corporate training, or all the above?
All of the above. I would say 75% of it is technical training. And it's basically teaching the software that we use, different versions of it, exactly how, again, we model it like it's built. So we're just kind of layering this whole thing on top of it. And then the last 25% is, again, sort of echoing back to the basic stuff. We have some pretty fundamental rules at our firm that have just paid off in dividends. And one of them is if somebody emails you, calls you, within 24 hours, respond. No questions asked. Like you have to do that. And if you, even if it's just as simple as I acknowledge, hey, I got it. I got your email. I'm too busy to get back to it in detail, but I will get back to you, in a couple of days from here.
Well, I wish more people. It drives me crazy when I'm working with somebody. I send them an email and they just ignore it.
Yeah,
and they don't acknowledge they got the thing. I don't know if they read it. So I'm glad you do that.
Yeah, even rejection. That's one of the things that even if clients don't want to work with us, after we've given them a proposal, tell me no. Please, at least just tell me no. That way,
yeah. Give me the courtesy of telling me to go away.
Yeah, it's simple. People are afraid to say no, but they shouldn't be, for sure. Yeah.
Well, when I teach people sales, I say, look, here's your goal. You want one of two answers, yes or no. You do not ever want to hear maybe.
Right. Limbo. and I didn't even realize that us talking about the communication literally is the next principle, F4. So we kind of already touched on that. I mean, it just, like I said, because we've been practicing this way for about a decade, and after we sort of wrote it down and now we reinforce it with our employees, old and new, it just kind of comes naturally.
So let me ask you a question. When you hire people, do you focus on technical skills or values that they bring to the party?
It's about half and half. We want well-rounded people. And what's really interesting is I actually prefer if they have zero experience in another firm, construction-wise or architecture-wise, because I look at them like a raw piece of clay with a lot of talent. And it's up to us to set the foundations and the basics out from the outset with them and train them and just build them up. Sort of like the Army, crawl, walk, run scenario. We're all about giving people their very first shot and really having them skyrocket, throughout their career. And I think it also builds loyalty as well, which is very hard to come by these days, right? There is no company man anymore, but I think we're trying to reverse that trend.
Something, I think that loyalty exists when you exhibit loyalty towards your employees. And I think it's the employer's job to start with that, not the employee's job. And too many employers I talk to say, my people aren't loyal. And then I ask them, what have you done to deserve loyalty? And they look at me like I'm crazy.
Yeah. I agree with you 100%. Yeah. They aren't just cogs in the wheels to us. We do become a pretty tight knit family with our firm. We're at about 10 people at this point, including the soon to be 11 with the construction arm. Yep. So we, when a breakup happens, meaning somebody decides to part ways, and it's only been employees so far, it's tough. But we really try to make it, every Friday we have F9 Friday lunch. We buy the whole firm lunch. Either before COVID, we were going out to eat. Now we're just ordering in. But even something as simple as that, where we're around the table once a week, all of us together, and we ask them a personal question such as, "Hey, what do you got going on this weekend?" And we just, get that interpersonality going a little bit is super helpful.
Yeah, the research is really interesting around that. Is that if you can get your employees to be friends with each other, they never leave.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you don't have an organization where people become friends, you're guaranteed to have high turnover.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe that. The first job I got out here in Colorado, my one coworker would not talk to me, and I would go home with headaches. It was the strangest condition ever. And now I look at our firm, and what's one of the best memories I have so far of all of the people in our firm, besides Alex and I, we're a little bit older and we have families. They don't quite have kids yet, but they will go out all together and hang out and do on the weekends and go camping and come back, and they don't skip a beat.
Cool. So what's your next one?
Next one is serve the client, the contractor in the city. And so we are service-based. I don't ever want us to lose track of, no matter how many awards we win, no matter how much money we're making, we are here to serve all of those people. And the better you serve, the better, the smoother it's going to go. And I think a lot of architects lose that idea that they're serving the client. For instance, Ayn Rand, if you've ever read The Fountainhead, and Howard Rourke, he did not serve his client; he served himself, and I'm not sure that really bodes well in reality.
Yeah, well, it we could have an interesting conversation about objectivism and Ayn Rand if you're interested, but I don't think you want to get into my weeds there.
No, we're good.
And I have read that. I used to be an Ayn Rand freak back when I was younger, but that's a different conversation.
Sure.
Okay. What's your next one?
Take extreme ownership. I don't know if you are familiar with Jocko Willink, but he really preaches this. Yeah, he's great. It's just own it. If you screw it up, we know as your bosses or as somebody who's working with us, we know mistakes happen, and nobody's perfect. There are going to be mistakes. The critical part is to take ownership of those mistakes. Take ownership of your work, because when people hire us as service-based professionals, they are trusting us. It's like when they when they go to see a doctor or an attorney. There's no difference if they're hiring a contractor or an architect. They are trusting with us with giant decisions in their life, in their businesses, and their money. So they want to see us own problems, own solutions, and move towards them.
Yeah, that actually fits in with two things, which are really core beliefs. One is my core value is personal responsibility. And the other thing you mentioned was my favorite, which is mistakes. And Buckminster Fuller had two great sayings about mistakes. One is you don't learn less, and mistakes are learning opportunities. So when someone makes a mistake around us, one thing I always want to make sure they do is they learn something from it, and I won't let somebody go until they tell me what their learning was. And that's a great thing. So your next one is?
Yeah. Next one is, this is number 7. Anybody's keeping track, is build the world. Creation is hard. City roadblocks are hard. Construction is one of the most difficult things that you can do, design and build. And we build the world. So don't be I think this point for us is it's more to be inspirational, and you sort of let them take off with the responsibility, knowing that you are actually building the world, and you are affecting the world every single day with every little tiny design decision, and it should be a positive one.
So I'm going to bet most of your employees are millennials. Am I correct?
You are 100% correct.
And I'm also going to bet that your employees love what you guys stand for, because the millennials are a mission-driven generation. You bring a millennial in and you don't give them a mission to be excited about, they're gone.
Yeah.
And I think too many employees, I'm a boomer, obviously, as you can probably tell. And my generation just does not get that. And I keep saying, look at guys, if we aren't giving our younger employees a mission, they're not happy, they're not staying, and they're going to cause you all sorts of problems. So start becoming mission driven. I'm really happy to hear that's what you guys are doing. So I think we're on number 8 now.
Number 8. Yes, sir. Yeah. Deliver value to be valuable. So what we do is we say, ask yourself, what is critical? How can we deliver value? How does the client need to see? Or what does the client need to see? How can your drawings help the contractor build a project? What will make the permit review easier for the building official? So it's just a critical analysis of yourself of what kind of value am I bringing to the table. And what's been really interesting with our employees after they've recognized this point is that when we go to do 1-year reviews and we're looking at improving their current contract with us, with a raise, different kinds of incentives, is they will come to the table with, here's the value I'm bringing. And they answer that kind of question for us. It's great.
That's cool. So do you train them to do that?
They, like I said, they because of these principles, and they understand the psychology that we're coming from as employers and just professionals in general, about always being able to justify your value. They just come out and make it happen without us really saying anything.
So how often do you talk about these your principles?
I'd say once a quarter is where we're at. We'll have a round table. You mentioned learning from mistakes earlier, and we obviously do make mistakes. Every once in a while, there's a very big mistake that we have to figure out how to solve that problem. And rather than making that employee an example, we just make it an example. And then that's where these kind of discussions come out and play. So when there's a mistake that happens, we take advantage of that and see it as, well, it's a blessing in disguise. There's a silver lining to everything. We're going to capitalize on this and not beat it into everybody's head, but just get them to understand so that it's not just one person's problem and solution. It becomes everybody's solution, so that they remember that moving ahead.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of W. Edwards Deming. I've been using his stuff since the early 80s. And one of the things he always said was, don't blame the person, blame the system. Or don't blame the person, blame the manager. And what I've learned over the years is that nobody ever wants to do things wrong. They want to do things right. Mm-hmm. And we as owners don't often set up systems for our people to be successful in. And you just brought that up really nicely. So your last principle, I bet, is a good one.
Yeah, it's the best one. Have fun. Life is too short to have a bad attitude. And if you're an entrepreneur, then you know that you're already doing, if you're a happy one anyway, you're already doing something you're very passionate about, and it doesn't feel like work. It feels like more of a pursuit. So yes. We try to have our employees, treated the same way. So you talk about systems, and I think that's great. That's a great point about your systems are going to set you up for success or failure. And that's what these 9 principles, are intended to do. And then it goes all the way back to that training and being good at the basics. If we're all on the same page, even if somebody leaves tragically, who knows? Because everybody's on the same page at our firm, and they understand the training, the systems, that if somebody leaves and somebody else has to take the project from them 50% of the way through, they can do it without a hiccup. It's really great how we can shuffle work around like that and be fluid. So
what type of stuff do you guys do? When do you do design build, I take it?
Yeah, this last year we took, well, let me back it up. We've been around for about 10 years. I moved to Boulder 10 years ago and got laid off in the Great Recession. My business partner moved to New York City, worked for a world-renowned architect, Daniel Liebskin, who did the first version of the World Trade Center when it was going to get rebuilt. We've landed some of the best jobs until we got laid off. And what we did is we started basically from nothing. And that's kind of where F9 Productions, that name comes in, is the F9 key on the keyboard was how you could produce renderings out of school. We had no previous work to show people to convince them that they should hire us. So it was all F9 Productions. It was renderings basically, and we built the firm from scratch. And I mean, we weren't working out of a garage, but we were working out of Alex's dining room in his apartment, which is kitty corner to mine. We started doing very small residential additions. Started working our way up to doing new builds, and then in 2013, the economy started to take off here. That's when we did our first design build project. It was a tiny house. We got featured on HGTV, which was really good press for us. And then we started to multiply because the economy took off, because people saw that we were fully capable. We did 2 more tiny houses for Subaru 2 years later, which was a really great commission. Then 2 years after that, the building I'm sitting in, where you can see behind me, is we built that. We did our first real estate development. It was 9 condos, 8 of which were residential for sale, and then our own commercial unit. the bottom half is a shop where we can store and procure like kitchen cabinets and windows and stuff like that for all of our build projects. And after we finished that, we decided to launch F14 production. So that's kind of where, I say we're a serial entrepreneur. And one of my favorite things about what we've done so far is with our podcast, Inside the Firm Podcast. You just go to InsideTheFirmPodcast.com. You can check it out there. It's on all the platforms. Is we documented that whole journey and we laid it out bare bones. I mean, we didn't really hold back about any kind of information, any kind of struggles we were going through. And that has been monetary wise. We have sponsors and Dell's great and Arcat, stuff like that. But the best part about it is when I get an email from another entrepreneur and they say something like, I was scared about, starting my own business, but I've started it and it's 3 months later and I'm busier than ever and happier than ever. And I just can't thank you guys enough.
Yeah, I've been working for myself for over 40 years now. And my joke is I'm unemployable because I just could not work for anybody else.
I hear you there.
It's actually not that much of a joke. If you talk to other folks in my firm, they'll say, yep, you're right. You're unemployable. You don't know how to keep your mouth shut.
We say that often. Yeah, I don't know how we can go back. We have so much fun. We have so much fun every single day.
Yeah, this is a journey I've really, truly, truly loved. So, unfortunately, Lance, we are out of time. It goes by quickly.
That was quick.
You're an interesting guy, and you have a really interesting guy. I do have one more question, though. Do you do mostly commercial or residential stuff?
Right now, we're about, I would say about 80% residential and 20% commercial. And every year, the 20% grows by a little bit. Yeah. So that's mainly our shtick.
So do you plan to grow into being primarily a commercial shop or primarily residential?
Well,
or 50-50?
I would 50-50. I mean, the market will always dictate everything and where everything's at. I think the biggest thing for us is what we learned from being laid off from those other firms was that's why we became serial entrepreneurs. And we try to start new businesses and do all kinds of different stuff to make sure revenue is coming in from all different places. Is all those other firms had revenue going from basically one stream. Once that stream was gone, they were gone. We were gone. So I want to just be as diverse as possible no matter what we do. So I would say we would always try to have a diverse portfolio of work.
Yeah, and by the way, we'll have to end it here, unfortunately, because this is another great topic, which is multiple streams of income. Mm-hmm. If your business doesn't have multiple streams of income, you are really putting yourself at risk. And by the way, folks who are listening, that also goes in the customer concentration. If you have one customer with over 20% of your business, you have a problem. And unfortunately, I see way too many entrepreneurs and private business owners where one customer is 50, 60, I've seen as high as 90% of their business. And boy, are you at risk. Mm-hmm. So, Lance, I have your website up here, which is f9productions.com for those who are listening and not watching the YouTube or Facebook Live presentation. And Lance, would you be willing to have conversation with folks? And if so, how would they find you?
Anyone at any time. I'm happy always. You can email me at lmc@f9productions.com. That's L as in Lance, M as in Michael, C as in Cat at f9productions.com. Find me on LinkedIn. There is only one Lance Cayko, Cayko, in the world. So I will link in with anybody. I really don't deny anybody linking in with me. That's how you and I got in touch. So reach out.
Yeah, I will. And I have something I would like to offer you. I actually have two things I'm going to ask you to do. One, please go to wherever you're listening to this podcast and give us an honest rating and review. It's really important. It helps us out a lot. If you hate the show, you can say you hate the show. You'll hurt my feelings, but that's okay. And if you love the show, you can say that too. And we're in the process of morphing the Cracking the Cash Flow Code to another name, which will be the third name. And I'm doing podcasts for 5 years now. And it is now going to be called the Sale Ready Company, because that's what people actually want. And if they don't want it, they need it if they don't want to sell anyhow. But I've written an ebook on what a Sale Ready Company is and how you get there. It's easy to get. You go to www.sustainablebusiness.co/Sale Ready and give me your name and your email. I know you don't want to do that, but you have to if you want to get this great ebook. And again, that's www.sustainablebusiness.co / sale ready is .co, not .com. And this is Josh Patrick. We're with Lance Cayko. You're at Cracking the Cash Flow Code. Thanks a lot for stopping by. I hope to see you back here really soon.